Welcome to the Voodoo Power Podcast.
Welcome to Plates and Pancakes. We're sitting down today with Dakota Essenpries. Dakota's from Adrian. She's an elite level gymnast who has competed at level 10 at Missouri Elite Gymnastics since 2019. She qualified for the 2022 Developmental Program Nationals with a top 20 finish on bars. She has won a Missouri State Championship in the vault and beam. Her career highs are a 9.65 vault, a 9.75 bars, a 9.35 beam and floor, with a 37.225 all around. She is committed to Arkansas to continue her career. So thanks for coming on the show, Dakota. So people don't know a whole lot about gymnastics. I mean, we get to see it on TV every 4 years. That's about it. The Olympics. I mean, now college is making its debut a little bit more on ESPN. I mean, but you only get a glimpse. So moving into the gymnastic world, it seems like a lot of those girls start really young. When did you start doing gymnastics?
I started just gymnastics classes when I was like 18 months with just the little like mommy and me classes. But I actually started competing when I was, I think, 4. Yeah, and I've been competing since I was 4.
That's a few years now because you're 18 now?
I'm 17.
17, going to be 18?
Yeah. In January, it marked 16 years since I started like just classes.
Now you work out of a gym your parents own?
Yeah.
So are your parents your coaches, or do they have other coaches that you work with?
They are now. When I was younger, I went through all different coaches. I think once I hit level 6 is when my parents started being my coaches. When I was levels 1, 2, 3, 4, I had different coaches, and then I skipped level 5. And then,
okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you were going to explain to somebody that didn't know a whole lot about it, how would you explain gymnastics?
That's hard. There's the basics. There's the 4 events: vault, bars, beam, floor. And the way the scoring works is, as you get higher in the levels, the scoring is a little bit different. But basically, there's 10 points, and they deduct based on like form. And then once you get to like level 10, you get extra points for more difficult skills and stuff like that. And the deductions are in tenths. So like when someone says, "Oh, I got an 8.5," someone's like, "Oh, that's good," but it's kind of not very good in like terms of gymnastics, because usually you try to stay in the 9s. And if someone says like a 7 that's not very good. That you usually fell if you got a 7. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, because if you just take that out of 10 rating, the 7 out of 10 doesn't sound that bad, but when it's the 10ths, it's a lot more than it seems.
Yeah, you got ahead of me on that question. It was actually in here, but I don't know much about scoring. Everybody that watches the Olympics loves to think they could probably score, as they're watching there. But does this sound accurate from what I've looked into? You got a D and an E score? A difficulty and execution?
In elite gymnastics.
In elite?
So in like the elite gymnastics, in the Olympics, and like the international competitions, they can get like a 13.5 or stuff like that, because they'll get a execution score out of 10, and then a difficulty score, which is just how many points they get for how hard their skills are, and then they add the 2 scores together. But in like club, it was called JO, but now it's developmental. It's just out of the 10, so it's just the execution score. But in level 9 and level 10, instead of starting at a 10, you start a little bit lower. So in level 9, you start at a 9.7, and level 10, you start at a 9.5, and you have to get those extra 3 or 5 tenths based on difficulty.
All right, that's what I wasn't sure on, how that all kind of went. It's changed a little bit over the years, hasn't it? From what it originally was?
I think it's changed in the elite level quite a bit, but I think in club it's stayed most the same.
So only 2%, I guess from what I researched, of gymnasts make it to level 10. Does that sound about accurate?
Yeah, somewhere around there probably.
So if you make it to level 10, you're fairly accomplished.
Yeah. I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know like at nationals there's this isn't really related to that, but at nationals there's 8 regions and there's 7 people per region that make it to nationals for each age group, and there's 12 age groups. And so depending on what region you're in, it could be like more difficult or not that difficult, because I know like some age groups in my region there's only 4 kids, so you get the score, you qualify, but then sometimes there's like 12 kids. So I think it's hard to tell like how many people there actually are, because it's different in every like area of the country.
So what region's the best?
We're in Region 4, so I represent Region 4 when I go. Usually, I'd like to say Region 4 is the best, but usually Region 5 has a lot of kids that make it to nationals, because the way it works is say a region only has 4 kids in the age group and the 4 kids qualify, they have 3 extra spots, and those 3 extra spots would go to whatever region won that age group last year. And so the next 3 kids for that region would compete on, so say Region 4 only had 4 spots and Region 5 had the other 3. Those 3 kids would compete for Region 4, but they would still be like representing Region 5.
Okay.
So. Yeah,
that'd be a little difficult to figure out sometimes unless you're doing it all the time.
Yeah.
So where is Region 5?
I'm not sure where Region 5 is, because it's like the groups of states, but Region 4 has Missouri, Iowa, and like that way. Mm-hmm. And then region like Kansas is where Region 3 is, so we're like on that split. But
I was just thinking of it in terms of softball. That's what I kind of understand. So California, Arizona was the best, in my opinion. Then Texas. Then we kind of fell in there. And then you had some of the South, Florida, stuff like that. But I thought this region competed very well nationally, so I didn't know gymnastic-wise how it fell.
I think Region 4 has just as many, or I think our best kids are just as good. I just think we have less really good kids. Mm-hmm. Like I think we have, our top kids would beat some of the top kids in other regions, but I think we have less of those top kids. It's more split. Okay,
well that makes sense.
Yeah.
So with what you do, you're doing, essentially acrobatic style skills. So I would imagine a lot of bad days go into a really good day.
Yeah.
How do you manage all the bad days it takes to have a really good day?
See, that's like kind of my one weakness, because I'm a perfectionist, so I want to do good every time, and I get pretty frustrated whenever I'm not doing good. But I think just as you like get higher in levels, you just see that the failing is what comes before the succeeding. So like I have to fail on this skill like 200 times before I can actually like have it down and consistent. And even then, like sometimes you just have a bad day, and sometimes it hits at meets, and that sucks, because like just last year I had a meet that I did really bad, like one of my worst meets in years, and it was really frustrating. But then I just went back to practice and just worked even harder, and it all worked out fine. So
yeah, it's gonna hit highs and lows. Even at the Olympic level, not every day are them girls at their best.
Yeah.
So when you start training for this sport seems different than all the other sports. When you start, it starts out fun, but pretty quick you're training for a career, not necessarily a season.
Yeah, gymnasts train year round. So there's it's kind of like different waves throughout the year, because like over the summer you're training upgrades and trying to get the next level skills, harder skills, and then kind of like the fall you're starting to get routines and trying to get consistent with your skills that you are competing. And then usually in the winter we have like 1 or 2 like little practice meets just to like feel what it's like to be in front of a judge and everything. And then hitting January, you're trying to like get really consistent and like perfecting those routines. And then like I think the hardest part is trying to control that to where you peak right at postseason. And then for us, at least, after postseason and nationals in like the end of May, beginning of June, we take a couple weeks off to rest our body. But I know a lot of gyms don't do that, and they just train year round.
They go hard all the time. Yeah. So I guess with training like that, how do you set attainable goals that aren't too far out of reach, but far enough that you're striving to be better all the time?
That's difficult. I know like with some skills, it's just you have to go in day by day. Like today I want to make 1, tomorrow I'll make 3. Or sometimes when you're learning a new skill, like on beam, you'll start on the low beam and then you're like, tomorrow I'll take it to the next higher beam and then I'll take the mats away and stuff like that. But then like as you get higher and more advanced, and once you hit level 10 and you've been in level 10 a couple years and you're more consistent, and then it starts to become hard with
Drop your mic.
Yeah. Starts to become hard with like trying to set those goals because you already have the skills. So it's not like skill goals. And so a lot of times you want to try and set like score goals. Like I want to get a 9.5 on this event, but that's hard too because different judges score differently. So usually it's just, you have to try and find the middle ground to where like it's something harder and more advanced, but something that you can control. Because I did find myself last season especially a lot of times trying to set a goal for a score and then being like, okay, the judges just might not be feeling that today. So towards the end of the season, I started figuring out like my goal last season was just to make every event at a meet. Just whether it was my best or not, just make it. And then the score would come with that.
And then scoring, that's its whole, I mean, we talked about it a little bit there at the beginning, but also, so like say somebody comes out of the gate early and sets a high score, well then the rest of their routines are better that day with their elevated scores because the judges didn't know what to go off of. So I could see where that would be hard to set a score goal not knowing what the judges are going to score that day.
Yeah, and this is a little bit like controversial, I guess, if you ask depending who, but I personally think some regions score different. Like if you, in my opinion, if you go to Region 4, they score a little bit harder. They just don't give as high scores. But if you go to Region 3, like if you go to Region 3 or Florida, I think that they give out scores a little bit easier. But yeah.
Well, there again, you're kind of a little bit ahead of me. So do you think a 10 is truly possible?
I think a 10 is very, very hard. I think in college scoring is different. They score easier in a way, like the deductions aren't as much. And so I think in college you can get a 10, but I think in club it's a lot harder to get a 10. I think you can get a 10 if you have enough difficulty.
So going into that, I guess from the outside looking in, when you say 10, I mean 10 is perfect.
Yeah.
Can anybody actually ever truly be perfect?
So that's another tricky thing is like if you do certain difficulty skills, so like if you do, for my vault, if I do a 1.5 twist, I actually get a 10.1 start value. So I have a 10th of deduction there to get a 10. And then same thing on bars, I have difficult enough skills where I actually have a 10.1 start value. So if you have a 10.1, you technically have 1/10 to give up and not be 100% perfect.
Okay, I mean that would make a little bit of sense because I was looking into that because I didn't necessarily have a conspiracy theory question for you, but the 10 was kind of as close as I'd get.
Yeah.
And I'd looked up and I'll probably butcher these names. I don't know how well you are with Czechoslovakian, but Olga Mustapanova got 12 10s at Olomouc, which was an alternate to the United States Olympics. Do you think there were some scoring issues maybe there?
I mean, I don't
Could anybody
know.
be that perfect, I guess, to get 12 10s?
I think once you get a 10 once, it's easier to get a 10 again because you know what you did. And also a judge could see that and be like, okay, this person's good, like, let's give it to them. I don't know how much you know, but in college there's Trinity Thomas. She's a Florida gymnast. She's gotten, I think, 23 perfect 10s in college. I think it's her 5th year right now. And I think some of them were perfect 10s, and I think some of them probably weren't. And I don't know if it was the name or if it was just the judge didn't see it, but I think they had some deductions in some of them.
I was just, you watch some of it because obviously I don't know much about gymnastics. So I spent the last week preparing for this, watching gymnastics. It all happens so dang fast, and they don't use replay. So your mind is telling you one thing, but that's why outside looking in, I just don't see how a 10 is possible.
Yeah, but I think that also makes it a little bit easier because if a judge doesn't see something, it's so fast that they're like, well, I guess it was perfect because I didn't see it.
So, yes, that's the point I'm trying to make, I guess. Theoretically, is it possible?
Yeah.
So you mentioned being a perfectionist. I think a lot of gymnasts probably are perfectionists. How do you manage that just to keep from going insane? It's never going to be perfect. How do you manage all of that?
I think as I've gotten through the years, I've gotten a lot better about it. But I think my main thing in like managing the perfectionism is setting goals and making sure I can achieve those goals in a good amount of time, because once I get that goal, I'm like, okay, we're getting there, and then I can set another goal, and so it's just step by step.
Okay. Watching a lot of athletes that start young, like you have, gymnasts, wrestlers, softball players, baseball players, you see a high burnout ratio. You're getting ready to start another part of your career at college, which will really step it up. How do you manage the burnout?
I don't know about other gyms, but I know we actually don't go as many hours as some gyms do, and I think that helps. And then also just like, I don't know, I just love the sport, and so it's just easier for me. And then like whenever sometimes when I was younger, if I would start to get like frustrated, I would watch a college meet or something, and that would get me like excited about it again. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. Everybody has a way of handling it.
Yeah.
So how many hours do you spend in the gym a week?
Spend in the gym or spend practicing?
Spent working on you.
Okay, I practice like 12, well, so it depends. During season, it's like 12 to 16 hours a week, but then during the summer, it gets to like 18 hours a week. And even that, all those numbers are really low for a gymnast. Most people, other gyms will go like 20, 25 hours.
Yeah, you could spend an incredible amount of time in there. So I guess to build on the question and how you kind of, before you answered it, you asked, it seems like gymnastics has a lot of mentor-mentee relationships. So do you spend quite a bit of time in the gym with younger athletes?
Yeah, I actually really like coaching too. And I think that's helped me a lot, because coaching the lower levels makes me go back and relearn the little techniques of it, because you're teaching it. So then it helps me remind myself of the techniques of the skills I'm doing. But then also I just, 3 years ago I started coaching, and I've like gotten up a level every year. So now I'm coaching level 3s, and it's like little 6-year-olds, level 3s. And yeah, it's really fun.
So you like working with the young girls like that?
Yeah.
I'd imagine that's pretty exciting for you and for them, because they know what your career has done. So they get to work with you, but then you get to help another girl reach her goal.
Yeah, and like it was cute because they were all there on my signing day and stuff like that. So yeah.
I saw some pictures of that maybe on your Instagram when I was getting ready for all this, without being like a creeper or whatever. I actually did try to do some research. And so did you sign at the gym?
Yeah, I had a signing ceremony at the gym on signing day, and then I also had like a little pretend signing ceremony at the school the next day, but the real one was at the gym.
And so all the gym girls came, and
yeah, I had a lot of people show up. I had all of my current teammates, all of the kids I've coached, and then I had a lot of my like ex-teammates that like, I had there was a girl who was my teammate, and I think she started being my teammate in level 3 or 4, and she was my teammate all the way up until my first year of level 10 when she quit. So we were really close, and we were kind of like training partners. Like anytime she would do a skill, I'd be like, oh, now I have to do it because she did it. And I had her there, and a lot of my former teammates that like helped me get to where I was. And then I invited all of my former coaches. A few of them showed up, and then family.
That sounds like a pretty good signing day. So what would you say is your best or most memorable moment in gymnastics?
Ooh. I think my favorite, like most memorable moment was probably just making it to nationals, just like the day I qualified, because I had tried to qualify multiple years ahead of that, but actually I guess only one, because my first year of level 10 was when COVID hit, so we didn't have postseason. And then the year after that I wanted it so bad, and I think I started on bars, and I did the best bar routine I'd ever done, and I was like, okay, this is the time. And then I went to beam and I fell, and once I fell I kind of knew, I was like, I have to do really good in these other 2 events to make it, and I didn't make it. I was an alternate, so I got 9th place, top 7 go to nationals. 8th place goes to nationals, but only competes if someone gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And then 9th place is like the second alternate, to where if the 8th place has to compete, you would go. So I didn't get to go, and that was frustrating. And then all the next season leading up to that, I worked really hard to get there. And then when I finally made it, it was kind of like all of it like paid off.
All that hard work that you'd put in. So your body takes quite a bit of abuse, a lot of falls, a lot of, hard impacts, things like that. What do you have to do to make sure that you're staying rested and recovered?
I've said this a lot of times, but I think our low hours help with that because it's not as much impact. And then just, icing and like making sure you get enough rest and stuff like that helps. And then, just all the basic stuff that people do is what's helped me. But
all right, so I guess going back to the gym work, you do quite a few events and all of it. So how do you break down your workout? Do you have vault days? Do you have bar days? How do you break down a gym workout?
I know some people will do it that way. The way we do it is usually we go from 3:30 to 7:45, and the first 20 minutes is warm up, just stretching and everything. And then we do 50 minutes on each event, vault, bars, beam, and floor, and then we have like 15 minutes of conditioning at the end. So that allows us to hit every event every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not very much time compared to other gyms, but I think that since we don't have very much time, we take a lot more turns in the time that we do have.
Okay. So what's your favorite event?
My favorites have been bars, just because I don't know why. It's always been my favorite event. I think I just like the feeling of like swinging, going around the bar. But throughout like the years, my favorite event has always been like whichever one I was best at. But I think bars is what like it comes down to.
Now, if somebody wanted to watch this on your Instagram, do you have all your videos?
I have videos. Depending how far back you go, I had videos on there while I was being recruited of like videos from competition.
Mm-hmm.
But then now I kind of post like just little snippets of practice videos and fun stuff I'm doing, and
Okay. So I guess you said you use that for recruiting purposes. So let's move into recruiting a little bit. I mean, we've experienced a little bit, not at the level that you're at, but I think people think it's probably more romantic of an experience than what it really is. What was your experience like?
Mine, I think, was very stressful because I didn't really know what I was doing. So I don't think I started soon enough, because you become recruitable the summer after your sophomore year is for us, whenever we can start like talking to coaches and stuff. And so I started sending emails and stuff once I became recruitable. But I realized like once I did that a lot of people had been sending emails already to get on the coach's radar, which I didn't really do, and I think I would do if I could go back. But then once I became recruitable, I started setting up calls and stuff like that, and I made sure to set up calls or send emails to like every level of college, because I had no idea what like level I was going to. So I remember my very first call was with a D2 school, and I was so nervous for it. And it ended up being totally fine, but I was really nervous for that D2 school. And then as it went, I started getting higher, and it was like, okay, this is like not as stressful as I thought, but it was really stressful in the beginning and the end, making that decision.
Right. What decision is the best for you? Because I'm sure you had a lot of opportunity.
I had a couple. I had one from that D2 school that I had the call with at the very beginning, had offered me as much of a scholarship as a D2 school can offer. And then I had a scholarship from a lower D1 school, a walk-on from a Big Ten school, and then the walk-on at the SEC school. So it was like weighing like what was the most important, what did I like, and that was really stressful.
So what finally led you to Arkansas?
I actually didn't. So I started talking to all these schools. Like I had been talking to all of them my whole junior year, and I actually didn't start talking to Arkansas until after nationals. So they were like really late in the game, and so the process with them was really rushed because I already had these offers that were like waiting on me to make a decision, and I was like, look, I gotta come like visit or something. And so I went on a visit like as soon as I could, and just once I visited, it was like, this is home. Like, I love the coaches, I love the facilities, I love everything about it. And yeah, I think the coaches remind me a lot of my parents, like personality-wise. And I think that's why I feel like it was the best fit for me.
And they've really invested a lot in their program the last few years. What, they were a preseason top 15, 11 or something like that?
Not this season, but I think last season.
Last season they were?
Yeah. This season they dropped a little bit, but they've started selling out their tickets at meets. They have, they compete at Barnhill, which is like their arena, and then they have Bud Walton, which is their basketball arena, and they've started doing more and more meets at Bud Walton, and they sold out Barnhill earlier this season, and then I think this last weekend they got to their highest tickets sold. It was like 11,000 something in Bud Walton in their basketball arena. So yeah, it's definitely growing there.
I mean, after you picked Arkansas, could you just not keep it to 2 rivals in the family? Did you have to add the 3rd rival?
Yeah, my dad, actually I talked to Mizzou for a little bit, but it didn't work out, and my dad, I'm kind of getting him to switch to Arkansas fan for most of it. Football, not so much, but everything else, yeah.
I could see him gravitating towards Arkansas as opposed to the other direction.
Yeah, KU's gone.
Yeah,
it's not in our family.
Now, is your mom still cling to it?
My mom doesn't so much. My mom's parents are KU fans, so anytime we're over there, it's like bickering and stuff. But my mom doesn't. My mom's Mizzou.
So she's come around to the good side. So, what opportunities is gymnastics giving you?
Gymnastics has given me a lot of opportunities based on like relationships. It helps that my parents are the coaches and stuff, but I've made a lot of friends and just like teammates that I had at nationals, because when you're at nationals you compete for your region, and so like the 7 people that qualify from your region are one team, and there was 2 girls that I went to Westerns in level 9, which it's basically nationals but it's Easterns and Westerns, and they were in my team then, and then they were on my team again at nationals, and so that was cool to see it kind of come full circle. And there's a couple other girls from Missouri that I've been competing against for a long time, and so it's like they're my competition, but they're also like my friends.
They got to be your friends, yeah. You guys are all working together and against each other all at the same time. So what has been your biggest setback or failure?
I don't know. I think really just coming up, I don't know if this is kind of what that would be asking, but coming up through the levels, I always had the skills, but I never like was clean. I always got really low scores. So I think my biggest challenge was figuring out how to score, because I always had the skills. I always had the skills for the next level, but I could never get the high scores. I think the highest scores I ever got were in level 10. And like if you look back in my history, each level, my scores actually get higher as I get harder levels, which is backwards for a lot of people, but
you start figuring it out.
Yeah,
kind of started clicking for you.
Maturing and figuring out how to score.
So, I know we talked about it before we come on the show a little bit. You're in season right now. How's your season been going so far?
My season so far has been pretty rough because like the week of the very first meet, I sprained my ankle. So I didn't get to compete at the first 2 meets. Just wasn't worth it. There was no point in pushing it. And then this last meet, I competed bars, and I did the best bar routine I've pretty much ever done in competition. Put a new skill in that actually adds difficulty, and I've been really consistent with the skills, so I'm looking forward to competing, but had to heal the ankle a little bit to get there, and I'm hoping to compete at least 3 of the events at Texas next weekend, and then hopefully I'll be good by the next meet.
Now, how late into the spring will your season go?
So our state is like mid-March, kind of end of March. And then if at state you have to get a 34 to qualify for regionals, and at regionals is again 2nd or 3rd weekend of April, and then if you place top 7 at regionals, you go to nationals, which is May 14th, because it's the same day as my graduation. Okay,
so you've been all over the country already this year. You were in Florida, Arkansas, you go to Texas next week. What's the rest of the schedule look like? Any other states in there?
We usually try to do 2 like pretty big travel meets and then one smaller travel meet each year. So Florida and Texas were our like kind of farther travel meets. Arkansas was our closer meet. And then we also have the meet in Overland Park that we host, and then a meet in Kansas City. And then we have state is at Jeff City, I think. And then regionals is in, I want to say Wisconsin, I think. And then nationals is in Oklahoma.
Okay, so by the time it's all said and done, you get to see a pretty good swath of the country. So who would you classify as your favorite gymnast?
So growing up, it's kind of funny because growing up, my favorite gymnast was always Jordan Weber. She was my favorite elite gymnast. And now she's going to be my coach in college. So that's kind of ironic. But yeah, Jordan Weber was my favorite coach coming up as a younger athlete.
Now, the stuff you do requires a lot of concentration, a lot of balance, a lot of body awareness. What's your biggest fear in gymnastics?
I think like physically, my biggest fear is like having a severe injury that is hard to come back from, because I don't know, like I know a lot of gymnasts have major injuries, like it's really common, but I've never, knock on wood, but I've never broken a bone, and I just want to keep that going. I don't want to have any major injuries that sit me out like all season.
Now, how big is a typical gymnastics team? How many girls are on it?
It depends on the gym, because like gyms in the city usually have like, there's some teams that have like 20 level 10s, but then like at my gym I'm the only level 10 and we have 2 level 9s, three level 9s. So yeah, it depends on where the gym is.
Now, what dictates your level?
Your skills. So like you level up when you get harder skills, and there's level 1 through 5, there's a certain set of skills that you have to have. And then once you hit level 6, it becomes optional. So you have to have a certain difficulty skill, but you can do whatever skill meets that difficulty, whatever you're best at.
And so all that's pretty clear cut, so you can practice it and know. So you choose when you want to try level 10 based on your skill set?
Usually it's pretty clear, because like if you're level 6, you compete level 6, and then the summer after level 6, you train the level 7 skills. And if you get the level 7 skills, you become a level 7. If you have like all but one of the level 7 skills, you might be able to go level 7 and just work really hard on that one skill. But then if you don't have all of them, you'll stay level 6 but train level 7 during the season, because you are already comfortable with the level 6 skills. Okay.
So yeah, you're always managing where you're at.
Yeah.
Now, do some girls find that they can't grab that next level and they stay at one level maybe longer than others?
Yeah, like moving up, I pretty much always got the next level skills all the way up until level 8. Level 8, I had to repeat. Once you get to the higher levels, it's pretty normal to compete or to like repeat the levels. I did level 8 for 2 years, and then I moved up and I did level 9 for 3 years before I was able to do it.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Is if it was a yearly advance or if it was a little bit slower of a process.
It depends on the kid. You can move at whatever rate you like are able to, but once you get to like level 8 and 9, you almost always repeat the level at least once.
So going back through my notes and looking at what questions we hit and we didn't hit, the bars are different. You talked about doing the bars because your ankle's sprained. They're a little different than all the other events. They're all strictly upper body. Yep. They don't require the legs near as much. How do you stay in shape or get into shape to do that with the centrifugal force pulling on you, the speed, moving bars, heights? How does that all work out?
Well, I think with bars, really the only way to get like used to it is just to do it, because it is different. And so like as you go up the levels, obviously there's like a certain developmental path you take, and each level or each skill leads into the next to kind of teach you how to do that. But like if you take a couple weeks off and then you come back, each event is kind of hard to get back into the groove. And I think bars, like especially with your hands, because your hands are like, they get tough to get used to that bar, and then if you take a couple weeks off, they get soft, and you have to get them back to like the toughness to not be ripping up. And
okay, I guess moving away from gymnastics a little bit, but it would still include gymnastics. How do you maintain the time and everything to still have the childhood you want, like cheerleading, all the things you do through the high school? How do you balance all that?
That was really hard coming up. There were a lot of things that I had to give up to do gymnastics. But yeah, once I was a sophomore in high school, I was really lucky to be given the opportunity to do football cheer with it. But I could only do football cheer because it wasn't during season. So like I couldn't do basketball cheer because it would have interfered with gymnastics. So it's just managing like the seasons, because if anything during January to like really April or May I couldn't do, I would have to focus on gymnastics. But outside of that, you can kind of work around the schedule to find some things you can do, but you definitely give up quite a bit.
And it's just a choice that has to be made at the time, and this has worked out really well for you. I'm sure the opportunities that it's opened have been better than basketball cheerleading, let's say. So I know you don't get very many weekends off this time of year, and I appreciate you coming out. This probably really ruined actually your weekend off, but I've been wanting to do it for a while. So thank you very much for coming out and sitting down and talking gymnastics.
Thank you for having me.